Hey, so I haven't done a video on this channel in quite a bit of time. My hair is kind of messy. I want to do this video in preparation for a new video that I want to upload on my main channel, so I'll just like ramble and talk about it because I feel like talking about it. It's usually like at midnight or 1 a.m. when I have the best ideas. So about relationships and about a lot of issues with relationships. And this is going to be completely from my perspective, and of course my experience doesn't apply to everybody, but this is my story, how I've experienced life. This is the world I see currently through my lens. So I think relationships these days are, I don't want to say they're super hard, but I think they're super hard for a subset of people in which they are the consumerist mindset. So this generation has this issue in which we are such consumerists. We're consuming content and we're in this mentality about like hustle, achieve more, live your dreams, have financial independence, start your own businesses, get your side gig on, never settle, right? Especially that never settle part. And I think the reason why people are not really in relationships anymore, or why they're failing, why you don't really see those long-term couples that you've seen, in your grandparents' age, where people would get married very young, 15, 18 years old, and stick together until they died. And I think it's because this generation, we live in this consumerist mindset, whereas in our grandparents' generation, they kind of lived in this, it's not necessarily obligation, but it's just like, this is my role and my job is to be a member of society and contribute positively to my employer, to my family, to my children, blah, 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 right? Like, people had a role to play to bring society up. But nowadays, it's not about the role. It's about what people can get from certain things, which is called a consumerist mindset. So I think the reason why people have a lot of issues with relationships nowadays is because we're framed in always about what can I get from the other person? How can the other person benefit me? I like this other person, but like, it's not necessarily about like, how can I be the best partner to them? It's more about how can I get the best out of them, or how can I get the best person out there? Again, it's this consumerist mindset instead of this like obligation mindset. And that's just why we have so many people who are like, don't settle. And a lot of like, it's all about like, don't settle and shoot for the moon and shoot for the stars kind of mentality in relationships. And I think this fucks over a lot of people, essentially. Because if you think of our grandparents' generation, they might have gone on like dates with 2 or 3 people, get married at a young age, and they build a life together. It wasn't about, let me have this list of characteristics that they must need to have, and make sure that I, everything checks off on the list, and that I feel butterflies in my stomach, and that everything is so amazing and great all the time. Like, our grandparents' generation was never like that. They were just kind of like, let's just find someone who's suitable. And I think when you get married at such a young age, I know there's this whole perception of like, oh, you don't know who you are at 20 years old, so don't get married that young. But I also do believe when you are, in a relationship with someone, when you're younger, it's easier to grow together and have life experiences together and kind of see eye to eye on certain things. I think after a certain age, especially when you have too many experiences, I firmly believe when you have too many experiences in the dating pool, that it can cause you to get jaded. It can cause you to be more manipulative. It can cause you to play games. Whereas if you're young and naive and you're just like jumping into a pool with someone else and you're both holding on and you're both young and naive and stuff, it's just a lot more innocent, But I think the older you get, the more manipulative you get, the more cold you get and the more you play games to guard your heart, which I think causes a lot of issues in relationships. So some things I've learned about, relationships is, I think especially being, you guys know I'm a control freak, especially being, such a control freak where I decide to start my own business. And every entrepreneur is a complete, massive, crazy ass control freak. Like, why would anyone go through that much hell and pain if they didn't want to control something? So for me, relationships are somewhat hard because you cannot control someone else, and you have to learn how to deal with that. And it's a really, really sometimes hard thing to get yourself around, which means when you cannot control something, you also have to learn how to compromise. And it's hard to compromise when, you don't have that, like, I don't have a chill personality. Like, I'm very particular in everything that I do. That makes me very successful, but at the same time, I know a lot of people who are very successful also have a lot of problems in relationships, because I think it's because they can't let go of those control freaks. I also know especially a lot of male, and I don't know why I'm saying male, I'm sure female, but more so the general stereotype is male CEOs, very successful, very attractive, whatever, but they're terrible, terrible jealous. They're very, very jealous, controlling of their partners. And, their partner is made to live this trophy life. You don't see that behind the scenes. You don't see that at first glance, but it happens behind the scenes. And I think CEO types are harder to deal with because they're controlling and a lot of them don't want to compromise. So, anyways, about relationships, I do think this generation is a little bit, I don't want to say they aim too high, because I don't think you should settle, but at the same time, there comes a point where you have to look at it from not just your perspective of you settling, because the other person could be settling for you as well, You can't put yourself in this pedestal thinking that you're the shit, you're the princess, and everyone kowtows to you. Because another guy on the other side might think, like, do I want to settle for her? Like, you have to think of it that way too. And so I think both people need to be flexible and humble enough to realize both sides have weaknesses, both sides have downfalls, and be humble and have grace to accept that, so that way they can be in a long-term relationship. Because eventually your partner is going to disappoint you. There's always going to be times where they're going to disappoint you, but you need to also understand that you're not perfect as well, and that you make mistakes. And so it's kind of this give and take, which I think this generation doesn't see, because this generation's like, if you can't handle me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best. Or what else do those memes say? I don't know. All those memes are like, find a guy who, like, they use that Meghan Markle picture where she looks at Prince Harry, and they're like, oh, like, look at, find a guy in which looks like you in this way that Meghan looks like Harry or whatever. Well, you don't know that, because you don't know what goes on in Meghan and Harry's relationship. I'm sure it's awful, to be honest. All those, like, public eye celebrity figure relationships, they always end deadly. So, just don't look into that. Don't look into that propaganda of what social media says your relationship or whatnot should be in. And I think also when you compare yourself in those relationships to others, it can bring a lot of unhappiness towards you. And then, people, again, it's this whole consumerist mindset. Like, this generation of millennials is all about consumerism. Me. What can I get out of this? What can I get? Even employers are complaining about millennials, because millennials are not being loyal to any job or any career. They always are thinking like, oh, I can do better. But like, yes, that hustle mentality might work for some aspects of your career, but it doesn't work for a long-term relationship if that is what you want. You're always trying to upgrade to the next thing or, whatnot. you're going to live a pretty miserable life. So that is just my thoughts about relationships these days and why this generation is kind of screwed in terms of having relationships like our grandparents did. Doesn't mean everyone needs to have a long-term relationship. I mean, it really depends on your values and what you're looking for. But I think for me personally, I want to, I don't want to keep jumping around. I don't want to keep jumping around. I don't want to keep, trading whatever, like growing whatever. I just want to, have a long-term relationship, have a family, have a stable home life. Because that's, I think, very, very important.